Several times over the course of my career, I felt the call. I used to teach high school, and although I was passionate about my work, in theory, constantly being on in front of classes, combined with the workload, constantly grading papers, left little time for the instructional design and creativity part that I desired. In order to make ends meet, I was taking on extra tutoring and enrichment classes. And at the end of the day, I might be prepping for 5 to 8 classes. So when I had my son, I started to think about what my future would look like if I continued on this path. Did I want to be putting all of my emotional energy and time into being scrappy and overloaded? Or did I want to put energy into being a parent and doing the part of the job that I really loved? If you've ever felt the call for change, this episode is for you. Women get to a point in life where we just don't care. We've been through the BS. We're burnout and done playing by the rules. Midlife is our time. We're fearless, confident, and ready to blow it all up for more. We are female and dangerous. I'm Jamesyn, your host and certified coach at theboldlife.coach. Let's do the work. The decision to switch careers wasn't easy. I had a lot of education, certification, and especially identity wrapped up in teaching. It was who I was. It wasn't just what I did for a living, or so I thought. I had been working with children as a teacher, a tutor, camp counselor, babysitter, and nanny my whole life. I infused my reading and writing courses with passionate social justice topics and critical thinking. I really enjoyed poring over teaching books, staying up on the latest psychology around how best to reach learners. But I also knew I needed more. I needed something different. I needed higher pay. I needed to take back my evening hours. And I couldn't stop that nagging voice in my head calling for me to change. So the idea of applying for jobs in the tech world seemed bananas. It brought up a lot of apprehension. Would I be able to break into the tech world as an instructional designer with only my academic teaching experience? I doubted it. What if no one wanted to hire me? How would I prove my credibility if I didn't have the right experience? At the time, it seemed like an impossible task in front of me, but those were just negative thoughts about my own abilities. My circumstances were just that, circumstances, and my thoughts needed to change. I started to think about future me, the one with a tech job, the great hours, not nighttime hours. What would she do? What would she have on her resume? What experience would she already have? And I set out to become that person. But first, I just needed to put myself out there. I started looking for a job I was qualified for with my existing background. So a stretch goal type of job, if you will. What I found was a summer contract role in digital publishing for education. The job required me to use my teaching experience to develop teaching content for a digital curriculum. This was literally the first digital curriculum I had heard of being created for kids, and it would be consumed on iPads. Cool stuff, huh? I'd always wanted to work in publishing. I dreamed of working for Scholastic magazine. You know, the book orders we used to get in school? I loved them. Or to get paid to read and select novels for publishing seemed so amazing, but it seemed so hard to reach as a career. So I took the safer, easier route into teaching English. Are you starting to hear a pattern of how limited my thinking used to be? Well, no more. I took a bold leap. I applied for this digital editor role, and lo and behold, I got it. So now I was in the hot seat. Was I really going to quit teaching after almost 8 years to jump into this new life? Hell no. I had taken the first steps, gotten the job, and now I had a big decision to make. Luckily, I'm quite resourceful. So since I was off teaching for the summer, I had the opportunity to get acclimated in this new role. I worked over the summer, things were going well, and so what I did was I decided to take a leave of absence from teaching for a year. I had just had my son, and I had a little leeway there, so I jumped on it. This would be a security blanket. It would enable me the safety net of having a job to return to, should I want to, but I still would get to focus on this new path in front of me. If it didn't work out, none would be the wiser, and I would be able to scurry back to my former job. Well, that didn't happen. But having a contingency plan gave me a great feeling of security. I know myself, and security in terms of finances, especially with a new baby, was really important to me. Nevertheless, I needed to answer the call for change, and it ended up taking my life in a new and rewarding direction. So during this time, I didn't just stop my growth plan. After all, this was a contract role. So that means that it would eventually end. And I knew that I wanted a full time, permanent role in the education technology field. So I put together a transition plan. I knew I was looking for a role where I could use my teaching experience to design curriculum, but most likely it would be for adults, or maybe it would be a similar educational publishing company for kids. So I reviewed job postings for the types of roles that I wanted, and I had to first understand what the expectations would be to determine where I had experience to gain and skill gaps to fill. Then I started building a bridge. So I already had a master's degree in education, which put me in a really good place for some of these roles that I wanted. However, I knew that in the tech world, I would need tech tools like e-learning, authoring tools, or graphic art and video editing tools. So I set out to learn them. I started a second master's degree in instructional design and technologies with the idea that this would bulk up my skills. I took a few certificate courses in instructional design, e-learning, and it only took a couple days, but those couple days in those courses would give me the skills that I needed to have the confidence to shift into this new career. I tailored my resume to focus on the experience I did have rather than the specific roles I had done. I also connected with some people that I knew in the corporate world to improve my chances of getting my foot in the door. It always helps to know people. And finally, I applied to many, many, many roles until finally one of my applications stuck. Many years ago, my mom said, keep putting applications out there until you get the job. And I never forgot that. I just kept putting myself out there until I found a role I wanted. So after taking all of this massive action, right, I had the confidence to fully change my belief systems about myself. I didn't have to be a teacher. I could be an instructional designer. I could have the experience. I could have the tools. And I finally found the confidence to bring future me to life. It was not impossible. I just needed to put in some effort and be creative and resourceful to realize the new, improved version of me. It was always there. That was 12 years ago. And since then, I've never stopped expanding my experience, my tool set, my leadership, my self image, my beliefs to become the leader I am today. I get to help other women transform their lives. I get to create visionary educational products. I get to talk with other people who care deeply about education. And I get to lead others to develop themselves to reach their goals every day. And all of this future me, who is my present me, is because I answered that initial call for change. So I want you to think about, where in your life are you being called to make a change? So many of us take the easy path or the unobstructed path or the obvious path. It's what we're expected to do. It's what we've always done. We think it's who we are, right? It's almost like living on autopilot. Our present circumstances seem like obligations, but the reality is that we choose our circumstances. We choose our thoughts about those circumstances, and we can choose differently. We don't need to box ourselves in by the limitations that we put on ourselves. So, what's the worst that could happen if you started something new? If you made a big change, if you made little changes? What if you just applied for that stretch goal job? Who knows? It might work out for you. So my advice is start small. You don't have to take a flying leap, so calm down. But you can try something new or different. You might like it. Take a class, start a hobby, apply for a new job, something to start the process of growth and development. Just take a look at the job boards. How can it hurt? You have to figure out what you really want and what is worth going after. What does a future you look and act like? What experiences does she have under her belt? What do you really envision your life to look like in 5 to 10 years if you really let yourself dream big? Is it a lot different from your current life? If so, you've got some thinking to do. Once you figure out what you're being called to do, put together an action plan. List out everything you need to do if you want to realize your goals. Prioritize. Put them in order. Figure out who can help you. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to change? Because the biggest part of making changes is acknowledging that not only do you have to act differently to affect change, but you need to think differently. You have to change your old ways of thinking, your old limitations about yourself. So try starting with I can. I can switch careers may not seem so easy to digest at first. I know it wasn't for me. But how about I can take a class? I can research job ads to see where I need help in developing more skills. I can reach out to my network to find out about opportunities. I can reach out to a coach or maybe somebody who has made a change before that you already know. I can see myself in a different job. I can live differently. Open up the doors to think about what you can do to get towards your goals. And finally, look at the life ahead of you. If you continue on this path that you're on today, what can you expect your life to look like in 5 or 10 years? Can you afford not to make a change? Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope it was some food for thought. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you want more, like and subscribe. You can find me here next week. If you would like some help to answer a call for change in your life, reach out to me at theboldlife.coach. I'm happy to help. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, give me a follow and a quick review. You can always reach me at theboldlife.coach. See you back here next week at Female and Dangerous.